After 7 long years of being told I was too poor, a hidden bond with my grandkids was unexpected. Charlotte huffed against the wind, an autumn gust pushing leaves across her yard like scattered memories. For 7 years, she'd been labeled too poor by those who once smiled and waved. The judgment cut deeper than any financial strain. She swept her gaze over the dilapidated farmhouse, feeling its worn beams resonate with unseen whispers. It was more than just a house. It harbored the laughter of her grandchildren, now so distant, locked in a world of wealth and expectations. Each quivering leaf eluded her grasp, much like her dreams of connecting with them. With each tool she unearthed from her late husband's workshop, nostalgia grappled with guilt and despair. The chisels and hammers weren't just tools, they were remnants of a family that used to thrive in solidarity. But now, those fragments of joy seemed like relics in a museum, a spirit of creativity buried under layers of dust and resentment. Charlotte's heart dragged against the weight of regret as she pondered if the grandchildren she adored would dismiss these memories, just like their parents did. Would they even care? She muttered under her breath, shaking her head. The echo of laughter from that workshop now felt like a taunting specter. The mere thought of seeing their faces light up with joy at a project made her pulse race, yet fear held her captive. What if they didn't understand her struggle? What if they felt ashamed? Would they recoil at the idea of being called a poor family? Each scenario revisited her like an unwelcome ghost. Days later, the wind felt crucial, swirling around her as she heard soft knocks on the back door. Her heart raced. Her grandkids stood there, timid and wide-eyed. An instinct to shield them flared in her chest while loneliness scratched at her soul. Were they here out of obligation? She fought the urge to withdraw, to hide behind walls built of insecurity. "Come in," she offered hesitantly, fighting every ounce of doubt as they moved cautiously into the warmth of the familiar space. As they wandered into the workshop, their fingers brushed against tools coated in dust, eyes alive with curiosity. Laughter emerged where tension once rested, a sound so soothing that Charlotte felt the barriers she erected around herself begin to crumble. But beneath that joy lay an undercurrent of worry, amplifying the ticking clock that reminded her of the upcoming exhibition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In moments shared crafting projects, Charlotte wondered if she should gather the courage to present their creations at the exhibition. The temptation to shield her grandchildren from potential scorn gnawed at her. Would the polished neighbors see beauty where they only knew rejection? What if her grandkids, bright and innocent, grew to mirror that judgment? It spiraled inside her until she could scarcely breathe. "Grandma, what if they don't like what we make?" Her grandson's voice sliced through her internal chaos, a reminder of the risks at hand. Fear twisted and coiled tightly around her heart, along with a weighty realization. Their connection carried both the risk of maintaining their bond and the threat of societal rejection. She stood there, paralyzed, as the tension of that moment stretched infinitely, her choices overshadowing the beauty of their newfound bond. What awaited them felt daunting, and she was left to wonder, could she brave the condemnation and nurture this fragile connection without losing it all? Charlotte clenched her fists, feeling the rough edges of a world that had long since deemed her unworthy. As her grandkids toyed with the workshop tools, the vulnerability she harbored started to unravel. She felt small, out of place amidst their childlike wonder. Yet their laughter stirred something dormant within her, a flicker of hope tempered by the chill of doubt. "Why are you guys so excited about this old stuff?" she asked, her tone light yet layered with apprehension. They exchanged glances before her granddaughter approached a paint-splattered canvas, leaned awkwardly against the wall, pointing at an almost forgotten piece of art. "Because it's yours, Grandma. The stuff you made. We think it's beautiful." The earnestness in her tone struck Charlotte straight in the chest. Could their naivety shield them from the harsh realities that had plagued Charlotte for years? The idea thrilled and terrified her. What if this bond was built on a foundation too fragile to withstand the scrutiny of a world that had shown her very few kindnesses? "Let's make something together. We could start with that," Charlotte suggested, feeling a surge of determination she thought had faded with age. For the first time in years, her heart surged with a flicker of excitement, nearly overshadowed by her fears. As they gathered their materials, old scraps of wood, jars of half-dried paint, and brushes, the workshop echoed with a cacophony of laughter and chatter, filling the void in Charlotte's heart. With each stroke of their brushes and whittle of the wood, she could feel their connection deepening, a masterpiece forming together that transcended their respective worlds. But her mind lingered on the upcoming exhibition. The prospect of displaying their work sent a bolt of panic surging through her. The memories of condescending glances, whispered snickers, and the unforgiving comments returned, sharp and vivid, like photographs taken in harsh light. She didn't want to expose her grandchildren to such dismissive behavior. She couldn't bear the thought of them being hurt. "Let's keep working on this, and soon we can show everyone," her grandson chirped, blissfully unaware of her turmoil. The way his eagerness shimmered with innocence contrasted painfully with her reality. Charlotte hesitated, the weight of the decision paralyzing. Was it right to let them invest in something that could shatter their bond with her? Outside, the wind howled as if echoing her inner conflict. Maybe just a small showcase for friends," she whispered, grappling with the implications of what that could mean. But even as she said it, doubt clawed at her insides. What if their small showcase turned into something bigger? What if they succeeded beyond her wildest dreams while she remained shackled to her fears? As the hours slipped by, the paint splattered on their hands painted a rich tapestry of possibility. A realization dawned. Her past perceptions and crippling fears could not dictate her future. They could be mere remnants of who she once was, shadows that no longer held power over her choices. But Charlotte still hesitated as tension pulled tighter around her heart. Could she really step onto this stage, embracing both her past and her present? Would she dare to bring her grandchildren with her into that uncertain world? In that moment, as laughter echoed and creativity flowed, Charlotte felt the ground shift beneath her. The fear that had weighed on her for so long felt increasingly like a chain she could break. Would she take that plunge? The thought spiraled within her, intertwining excitement with trepidation as her resolve began to mold anew. The moment had come to confront her insecurities, to bring forth a part of herself that had been silenced for too long. Her heart raced as she considered the possibilities, the whispers within her urging her to choose. It was time to transform their creation into something more than just a project. It was time to face the inevitable. Would she rise to the challenge or retreat back into the shadows of her fears? The decisions she made now could change their lives forever. With a final breath, Charlotte resolved to step forward into the light. Or was it the darkness? The weight of her past and the promise of the future bore down on her as those tiny hands reached for hers, ready for whatever lay ahead. What awaited her just beyond that precarious leap? The next day, the workshop brimmed with anticipation. Charlotte stood at the threshold, her heart still racing from the decision she had made. Her grandchildren's faces glowed with excitement, each moment they spent together weaving an intricate tapestry of hope and creativity. Yet as Charlotte held the paintbrush, she felt a pull between her renewed spirit and the shadows of self-doubt that lingered at the edges of her consciousness. "Let's paint the big canvas today!" her grandson shouted, setting the pace with his infectious energy. Charlotte took a deep breath, steeling herself against the memories that crept in, threatening to pull her back into her shell. They worked together with newfound enthusiasm, layering colors, absorbing the joy of collaboration. Each stroke of paint felt like a battle won, a small rebellion against the voice that whispered she wasn't enough. But when a streak of orange clashed with bright blue, the cheery atmosphere shifted slightly. Charlotte's instinct was to retreat, suppressing the urge for perfection that had haunted her for years. She saw the worried look on her granddaughter's face when she hesitated, poised with the brush above the canvas. "Is something wrong, Grandma?" her granddaughter asked, concern drawing her little brow together. The question sliced through Charlotte's facade. Deep down, she knew the real struggle lay not with the paint mixing awkwardly, but with the fear of judgment. And in this moment, faced with the innocent eyes of her grandchildren, she couldn't afford to let doubt triumph. "No, sweetie," she replied softly, placing the brush down. I've been thinking about how we can make this painting truly special, together." There was a hesitant silence before her grandson resumed his work with fresh vigor, as if Charlotte had cast a spell that reinstated their focus. But in that heartbeat, Charlotte wrestled with herself. Could she really push past the obstacles? This wasn't just about paint. It reflected her willingness to face the world again. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting its warm glow through the workshop window, Charlotte found herself staring at their near-finished piece. It took her breath away. Not just the vibrant colors, but the collaboration that had come from all three of them showed her life taking shape outside confines of her fears. The idea of inviting friends over felt possible now, like the breath before taking a leap. Yet as enthusiasm washed over her, doubt scuttled back into view. What if it turned sour? What if the joy she experienced was a facade, just waiting to crack under scrutiny? Could she maintain this newfound connection amidst the potential heartbreak? Charlotte's gaze lowered to the brushes in her hand. They had created a world in that painting, a realm of boundless imagination. Would she allow fear to eclipse it? The thought revolved around her mind, the tension a tangible weight. Just then, her granddaughter reached for her arm, pulling her from the spiral of anxiety. "Can we show it to our friends next weekend? They'll love it." Charlotte's heart twisted. Yes, she wanted to say yes. But the very notion of it struck terror deep within her. Her children had not shared that love for her work. Their kindness was a balm for her ignored wounds. But then another thought surfaced, startling in its clarity. Maybe it was time to let their love transform her wounds into strengths. The air in the workshop crackled with anticipation, mirroring the contrast within Charlotte. She felt the edges of her anxiety fusing into curiosity. Could she redefine the way she perceived the world? I think we can invite some friends," she stammered, each word lighter, more deliberate than the last. Her grandchildren erupted in cheers, their eyes sparkling with unfiltered joy. Every affirmation exchanged felt like a solid bridge being constructed between past fears and future artistry. Yet somewhere in the crevices of her heart, doubt whispered still, igniting her determination to face it head-on. As they enveloped themselves in the vibrant chaos of paint once more, a question loomed in her mind. Could this leap unlock the door to a part of her she hadn't fully embraced yet? Or would she falter, once more forced to navigate the darkness of self-doubt? Charlotte grasped the brush tightly, aware that the moment of truth was near. The stakes felt higher now. Not just for herself, but for her grandchildren and the burgeoning legacy they were crafting together. The world seemed vast and uncharted before her, and the path illuminated slowly, but surely. It was in the unknown where destiny awaited her. Would she guide her grandchildren into the light, or would she step back, letting fear claim its victory once more? The question loomed large, a silent promise demanding to be answered. The days that followed buzzed with activity, as Charlotte, buoyed by her decision, began preparations for the gathering. The prospect felt exhilarating and frightening simultaneously, a tightrope walk suspended between hope and dread. Each decision she made, What snacks to prepare, what art supplies to gather, sent her heart quaking, yet ignited a flicker of excitement deep inside. As she cleared the workshop space, her grandchildren buzzed around her, their youthful enthusiasm infusing her with vigor. They painted cardboard cutouts, creating colorful decorations that would add to the whimsical ambiance. Charlotte marveled at their creativity. Their laughter filled the air, spinning a delightful web of connection she had almost forgotten existed. She joined in, wielding her brush alongside them, yet a knot of anxiety churned in her stomach. Yet every stroke on the canvas also creased new lines of courage within her. This sense of relief intermingled with the fear of the impending gathering. What were friends going to think? Would they belittle the effort? Render her fragile confidence to ruins? Each thought echoed like the ticking of a clock, a reminder of the importance of this moment. Her granddaughter's voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Grandma, can we make a big sign that says welcome?" The question wrapped around Charlotte's heart like a warm embrace. It wasn't just a sign. It felt like a clarion call to embrace everything she had been too afraid to show before. "Yes, let's do that. That's a wonderful idea." Charlotte's response spilled out with unexpected enthusiasm. Perhaps this was more than merely showcasing their art. This was about sharing a part of herself that had been cloistered away for too long. As the day approached, Charlotte's mind became a battlefield. Self-doubt prowled in the shadows, whispering venomous words that seeped into her psyche. What if your friends don't appreciate this? What if they think you're out of your league? In a quiet moment, she glanced at the big canvas, now nearly complete. The colors clashed, yet harmonized in an odd way, much like the variety of emotions swirling within her. Seeking solace, Charlotte stepped outside, the sunlight embracing her like an old friend. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, the fresh air filling her with strength. It became clear, this was not just an event, it was a celebration of life itself, a synergistic harmony she longed to weave into her narrative. Calm settled over her, solidifying the resolve she felt before her grandchildren. Over the next days, she meticulously refined her plan, collecting not only snacks and refreshments, but recalling old stories, anecdotes that danced on the edges of memory. She thought about the laughter that would fill the workshop, the joyous interactions she envisioned. Finally, the day arrived. Charlotte set the table, the sun streaming through the workshop windows, casting patterns across the painted canvas. As her grandchildren helped straighten the chairs, Charlotte caught sight of their sheer eagerness. "We're ready," they chirped in unison, their faces glowing with excitement. But as the clock ticked closer to arrival time, doubt surged anew. The anticipation felt like standing at the edge of an abyss, teetering on the cusp of something monumental. The reassurance of her grandchildren felt like an anchor for her wavering spirit, yet in each creak of the wood beneath her feet, tension lurked. With a sudden crescendo of resolve, Charlotte made her choice. Vulnerability had previously felt like a weight, but now it transformed into a mantle of resilience. She clutched the doorknob. Invigorated by newfound confidence, she opened the door as the first friends arrived, each face greeted with a heartfelt smile. And as the laughter began to fill the room, Charlotte felt the creeping shadows of doubt recede. A shift had taken place, profound yet quiet. Yet amidst the laughter and creativity blossoming in her workshop, a whisper lingered, suggesting that behind every smile lay uncharted depths of her story waiting to unfold. In the midst of welcoming her friends, Charlotte's gaze flickered back toward the canvas, pondering whether this joyous moment might unravel a deeper connection, one that reached not just to her grandchildren, but to her past, her fears, and ultimately herself. Could this gathering be the catalyst for exploring relationships not yet discovered, both within herself and with others? The thought lingered, brewing a cocktail of excitement. Perhaps this is just the beginning, she mused as the laughter echoed around her, setting the stage for her next great leap. In that moment of uncertainty, Charlotte realized the journey ahead was as vivid and uncharted as the paint splattered across their canvas, inviting an exploration she hadn't dared to imagine before. As the room swelled with laughter and familiarity, Charlotte felt the undercurrents of her past swirl around the vibrant chaos. The playful banter between friends brushed away her lingering insecurities, but every joyful interaction danced on the thin line of her vulnerability. The canvas stood tall, a testament to her effort, but Charlotte's gaze wandered, probing the bounds of newfound confidence. She leaned closer, examining the layers of paint-spilling colors that mirrored the emotions she had concealed for years. Each stroke symbolized a step she took toward reclaiming her identity, yet a nagging voice whispered doubts laced with a familiar bitterness. What if they only saw the artist's facade, the playful hues and whimsical patterns? What if they couldn't discern the deeper palette of her life? Suddenly, a clamor caught her attention. Her friends had gathered around, admiring the artwork she created. A warm flush enveloped her. One of her oldest companions, B, reached out, pointed a finger at the piece, a swirling mix of colors. This captures the joy of the moment, Charlotte. It's breathtaking. A knot of pride twisted with apprehension in her chest. Everything within her pulsated, yearning for their sincere applause, but also fearing superficial validation. What did it mean to be recognized for an effort? She questioned herself. A conversation steered toward the art, engaging her, taking her unproven talent and elevating it to something worthy of discussion. In that frenetic moment, Charlotte realized that perhaps it was not about perfection. It was about the intention behind every brushstroke, mirroring her own journey, a journey of resilience against the tide of doubt. As laughter erupted around her, she found herself stepping deeper into the role of an artist, and perhaps a leader. While her heart swelled, recollections of past failures and the criticisms still whispered in her mind. It made her wince, clamping tighter on the edges of her resolve. Suddenly, she questioned the very core of her endeavor. Did she truly have the right to occupy this space in the hearts of others, to claim her narrative against the shadow of her fears that whispered she was not enough? The conversation shifted, revealing threads of vulnerability that resonated strangely within her. Stories were shared, trials and tribulations that connected their hearts, stories laced with anguish but brightened by moments of joy. As each tale unfolded, Charlotte's walls began to crack. The realization descended upon her like an awakening. Everyone harbored their own scars. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte felt an impulsive urge to reciprocate the honesty. The words spilled forth, unearthing deep-seated fears while illuminating her personal battles, the insecurities that shaped her but had never defined her. You know, there was a time when I believed I was too poor to create, to foster community, even to reach out. I let those voices drown out my passion. Everyone turned, eyes attentive, and for once, Charlotte maintained steady eye contact. They listened, not with judgment, but with an earnest openness that made her feel understood. A shimmering thread of connection emerged, weaving through the fabric of their shared struggles, and suddenly the burdens felt lighter. Yet, amidst this bond being forged, a flutter of fear pulsed within her. What would happen when the laughter faded and silences crept back into her life? Would she shrink back into the shadows of doubt, or could she embrace the intricacies of relationships cultivated in this space? That night, as the decorations dimmed and remnants of camaraderie lingered in the air, she felt simultaneously fulfilled and disconcerted. Charlotte understood she stood at a precipice. Her path veered off into the unknown territory of deeper connections, but uncertainty still gripped her. What will this friendship require of me? She pondered, engaging with the tension that began to brew beneath her earlier excitement. The echoes of the gathering replayed in her mind, filling her with hope and anxiety in equal measure. As she tucked her grandchildren into bed, their soft snores blending with the quiet camaraderie she just forged, Charlotte stared out the window at the twilight sky. The relationships, though illuminated, felt fragile, as if they might whisk away with the night. Could she nurture this warmth and foster deeper connections before the sunlight faded? She hesitated, knowing that stepping further into vulnerability required courage, not only in her artistic expression but in every interaction. The next day dawned, illuminating the choices ahead. Charlotte had to decide what kind of legacy she wanted to create. Would she hide behind layers of paint, or embrace bare honesty even when it felt terrifying? The crossroads loomed, and although her heart raced with apprehension, something deeper whispered, a call to explore the intricacies of connection, yearning for her touch. But would she have the strength to face her fears anew and venture into the uncharted territory of deeper relationships formed by authenticity? This question lingered, enticing yet daunting, softly beckoning her to tread carefully into the depths awaiting her next steps. Charlotte awoke that morning, the sun filtering through her curtains, pulling her from the tenuous comfort of sleep. A reprieve from the whirlwind of emotions that had swept through her life at the gathering, yet now an undertow of responsibility awaited. Today, the canvas of her life stretched beyond paint. It awaited her engagement in the delicate art of connection. As she brewed her morning coffee, the familiar aroma entwined with scattered memories of her past, whispers of doubt began to creep in again. How could she support her grandchildren beyond mere presence? The very essence of her question ignited a flicker of resolve. This was not simply an artistic endeavor. It was about being the grandmother they needed, understanding that vulnerability was essential in nurturing closeness. With her thoughts simmering, she rummaged through her old designs and sketches, ideas brimming, but oft neglected. Perhaps she could involve her grandkids in a creative project. A realization struck her. Together they could explore not only the creative process, but also deepen their connection. This wasn't just about them creating art. It was the act of creating together that mattered, crafting memories while expressing their uniqueness. The concept thrilled her, yet unease lingered. What if the kids found it boring? Would they see in herself the same old insecurities she battled? Growth demanded that she venture into new territories despite the fear gnawing at her heart. Determined, she quickly penned an outline of the project that simply combined their personalities with art. Underneath the outline swirled layers of excitement and apprehension. She felt the prospect of failed execution weighting her down, like unseen anchors threatening to drag her under. But as she looked at the project unfolding on paper, an exhilarating thought emerged. What if they succeeded together, inspiring exploration beyond the canvas? She gathered her grandchildren around the kitchen table later that day, her eagerness bubbling to the surface. Their curious eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, Charlotte felt the warmth of potential connection. Whatever fears of inadequacy laid silent in their eager anticipation. Let's create something special today. Together. But then came the silence. They stared at her, the initial spark of excitement faltering under the weight of uncertain reactions. With a slight tremor, she unveiled the colorful idea, a vision for a mural combining their imaginations drawn from their daily lives, their joys, battles, and stories embodied in vivid colors. Can we really create something that big, like a whole wall? Her eldest grandchild exclaimed, eyes wide, shifting between disbelief and exhilaration. Charlotte hesitated, feeling the weight of her insecurities bubbling again, but the flame kindled within her. We can, if we want to. It's about sharing our thoughts, feelings, our art. What do you think? Their responses blossomed, words weaving a tapestry of laughter and anticipation. Ideas flew as they speculated what the colors of their favorite memories symbolized. Charlotte leaned in, encouragement lacing her voice, battling against the doubts that threatened to pin her down. Each idea from her grandchildren felt bursting with authenticity, raw, unfiltered excitement. In those moments, she recognized the delicate balance of influence. Like the strokes of paint, every thought carried emotional weight. And just as she encouraged their creativity, it ignited a spark within herself, the courage to share the personal elements of her life further. "Let me tell you a story about how I once felt too afraid to create," she began, allowing her voice to spill out her guarded experiences while crafting a bridge that could lead to richer conversations, amplifying the intergenerational connection. The atmosphere woven between them changed. A shared narrative emerged, one that would shape their mural and fill its canvas with dimensional meaning. The colors took on layers of trust, fears voiced and dreams unfolding. In that moment, Charlotte embraced the beauty of vulnerability, the delicate balance between sharing her past and cultivating resilience. As the day progressed, the walls, much like her heart, filled with vibrant strokes of creativity not solely made by her hands, but born out of the essence of their shared experiences. Yet, as they painted, a lingering question loomed in the back of her mind. What would their bond require once the canvas dried? The color and canvas of their project held so much promise, but would the same authenticity and vulnerability be required from her as they ventured into discussions of deeper vulnerabilities? As the sun began to set, casting a gold hue through their kitchen, Charlotte felt the gravity of their collective efforts stir within her, a dance fraught with excitement and apprehension. Would she sustain the momentum of this connection, ensuring that the bonds they now forged thrived beyond the strokes of paint? This uncertainty tugged at her heart, captivating her mind, beckoning her to consider her next steps in this unpredictable journey. What awaited her after this initial leap into shared vulnerability? Could she maintain the courageous depths of honesty, even beyond art, as they confronted life's challenges together? The air crackled with anticipation, leaving her uneasy yet invigorated, ready for whatever came next. Charlotte awoke the next morning with a sense of urgency. The mural project with her grandchildren shimmered on the horizon of her mind, a vivid tapestry of colors yet to be fully realized. Yet, alongside that excitement, glimmered a nagging unease. The shadows of her insecurities flickered at the edges of her visions. Could she truly dive deeper into the emotional wellsprings of their relationships, allowing raw honesty to shape their interactions as they shaped their mural? As she sipped her coffee, she turned over the experiences of yesterday in her mind, dissecting each moment. The children had been so willing to share their ideas, yet what would happen when they faced harder truths, the kind that lay tucked beneath those splashy colors? Would her past experiences, full of struggle and defeat, add weight to their creations or hold them back? The thought triggered a surge of urgency. She needed a plan. Instead of turning to her usual sketchbook, she grabbed a plain notebook and began to write down a series of questions aimed at opening deeper discussions. What stories of courage could they explore together? What fears deserved to be painted? She wrote, "What makes you feel vulnerable? What is something that scares you but you want to face? What do you wish you could express?" Each question unveiled a new layer of bravery, both for her and her grandchildren. As she wrote, she felt a flicker of resolve. Engaging in these scenarios might empower her grandkids to explore their emotions more profoundly. Perhaps they could confront their fears together, bridging the gap between art and life. With these questions simmering in her mind, Charlotte reached for her phone and hesitated, her finger hovering over the text option. She wanted advice from her daughter. Perhaps she could bring some insight into these deeper themes, but feared sounding foolish. Am I being too hard on them, or too hard on myself? The weight of her uncertainty streamlined her thoughts. She hit send, inviting her daughter to join them for the next family art session. Later that day, as her grandchildren gathered around her kitchen table once more, Charlotte felt that familiar thrill in her heart. This time, she also felt something else: commitment. She was determined to let go of her fears, stepping into the role of a brave leader. Without further hesitation, she introduced the provocative questions while they mixed paint, allowing the atmosphere to thrum with possibility. "What if we think of our mural not just as something beautiful," she said, but as a way to show our fears and dreams. The kids stared at her, slowly processing the notion. The room hummed with their growing curiosity, urging her to press on. Mary, her youngest grandchild, asked, "Like what you painted when you were little, Grandma?" with a spark of interest in her voice. A path opened. Charlotte could feel the energy shift, tension dissolving into the air, replaced with anticipation. It was here, in these small moments of connection, she found herself. The ensuing discussions were rich and revealing. Tales of lost soccer games, struggles with friends, and worries about school poured out in colorful bursts. With every shared story, they dipped their brushes in paint and swept strokes across the canvas, transforming pain into representation. Yet even in this vibrant space, Charlotte felt the shadows creep closer. A fear lingered in her mind. What if they grew tired of such conversations? What if artistic expression revealed vulnerabilities they weren't prepared to confront? Would she somehow lose the connection built through their honest expressions? The day wore on, each shared moment, crafting a stronger bond, and yet a question nagged at her. The deeper truths remained just outside reach. When the mural was complete, what would happen if they faced challenges that required more than paint and brush? Would words fail them when pain called for articulation? As her grandchildren stepped back to admire their creation, a striking blend of emotions, colors, and stories, Charlotte felt an unusual conviction bloom within her. This was more than just art. It was a foundation for something more profound, an emotional framework for future conversations. Yet, could this burgeoning bond evolve into a safe space for continual honesty as life began to unravel its complexity? Charlotte knew she needed to be steadfast, to invite authenticity even in discomfort. The real test lay ahead, lurking beyond the palette of colors, shadows waiting to be acknowledged. As they admired their mural, questions of how to sustain this evolved relationship ate at her. Would they navigate the terrain of deeper truths together? The moment had arrived to face their hidden fears and realities. Ready for the challenge, Charlotte whispered under her breath, a question forming in her mind. How would they confront the inevitable struggles ahead, and what would their art teach them about resilience and healing? Charlotte awoke the following morning, her thoughts swirling around the mural that proudly adorned her living room wall. It was more than just a patchwork of colors. It had transformed into a testament to courage, vulnerability, and voice. But beneath the vibrancy, unease still lingered. How would they address the deeper emotional struggles that life would inevitably throw their way? Every brushstroke reminded her of the questions they had discussed, each one a key to unlocking her grandchildren's hearts. But now she faced an uncertainty of her own. Could she guide them beyond this initial burst of creativity? More importantly, how would she sustain the momentum they had built together? Determined, she mapped out a week of activities that she hoped would provide a platform for deeper engagement. Themed art days, she labeled them, each dedicated to a feeling or experience, fear, joy, loss, and love. Charlotte imagined them delving into stories, unraveling emotions like an artist, untangled, carefully placed colors on a palette. But as enticing as this vision was, a voice in the back of her head questioned her ability to keep the discussions alive. Could she strike the right balance between gravity and lightness, encouraging her grandchildren to share while ensuring they didn't feel overwhelmed? Later that afternoon, she was ready to test the waters. Seated at the kitchen table, surrounded by paint, the mood felt different. An opportunity approached as she decided to start with joy. "Let's paint what makes us happy," she encouraged, the excitement bubbling in her chest. As they responded, the conversation flowed like the colors on their canvas. Each grandchild brought forth ideas, vacations, family gatherings, the day they learned to ride bikes. They laughed, shared stories, and painted with abandon. Charlotte reveled in their laughter, feeling the warmth of the moment. Yet beneath that surface joy, a deeper fear bubbled. What would happen when they needed to paint with darker colors? As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the table, Charlotte made a bold decision. Tonight, let's try something different. She raised her voice, intentional in her authority. I want each of you to think about a fear, something that scares you. Let's represent that in your art. For a moment they hesitated, the atmosphere thickening with uncertainty. The chatter subdued, kids exchanging glances. Fear had a way of stunting creativity. Charlotte's own heart raced as she felt the weight of her request. Each child faced the challenge before them with a mix of apprehension and intrigue. Mary, ever the brave one, took the lead. I'm scared of the dark, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was the opening she needed. As her grandchildren each began to articulate their fears, fear of falling short, of loneliness, of failure, Charlotte witnessed the evolution of their conversations. They shared and painted together, connecting in a way she feared may never be possible. It was as though the fears spun into colors on their canvas, a representation of their struggles. Yet, in this moment of vulnerability and courage, a new anxiety settled in Charlotte's stomach. Would these expressions stay confined to the canvas? When life became heavy, and it would they have the tools to confront their fears? Would they remember the safety of the art space when darkness crept in? Charlotte realized that the mural was merely the beginning, a foundational structure that would need reinforcement long after the paint dried. It was vital now, more than ever, to cultivate resilience and open dialogue even as difficult emotions arose. As the children showcased their creations, Charlotte couldn't help but feel pride mixed with apprehension. They stood together, vibrant colors spilling forth while underlying shadows scattered the canvas, an unspoken promise to face their fears head-on. Let's not just stop here, she declared, steeling her determination. Our next activity is going to push us further. It'll be tough, but I believe we can do it together. She paused, scanning her grandchildren's faces, catching glimmers of both challenge and curiosity. The moment of reckoning had arrived. How would her grandchildren respond to the next step in their creative journey? What would they uncover when they ventured deeper into uncharted territories of emotions and experiences? Charlotte felt her heart race with anticipation. This was only the start. Charlotte sat in the fading light of the day, the laughter of her grandchildren still echoing in her ears. She glanced down at their paintings, a vivid display of emotions now pressed between the reality of her expectations and the weight of her own self-doubt. The previous night had been an unplanned pivot in their journey. As they bared their fears, she wondered if this newfound openness had the potential to create lasting change. But fear lurked at the edges of her optimism. Had she woven a fragile net or a sturdy foundation? Determined to keep that momentum alive, she woke the next morning with renewed purpose. In her notebook, she meticulously designed the upcoming activities, this time weaving lessons of resilience directly into the fabric of their art projects. Each day's theme would now be followed by discussions of how they could navigate challenges together, thus embracing a model for future emotional discussions. Experiencing hardship became one of her favorite headers. The next day's theme was loss. There was solemnity in that word, and Charlotte felt its weight. It was apparent that the crushing reality of loss would eventually touch each of their lives in some form. How could she guide them through this terrain without overwhelming them? She spent the evening conjuring up memories of her own losses, loss of loved ones, dreams, and opportunities, and revisiting the raw emotions that accompanied them. As her grandchildren convened, she introduced the day's theme gently, mindful of her words. Today, we're going to talk about loss, she began, gauging their reactions carefully. But I promise by the end, we'll create something beautiful out of it. A flutter of apprehension crossed their faces. Would they see her as a safe harbor or as the storm itself? Mary raised her hand hesitantly. Does that mean we have to talk about sad things? Charlotte nodded, her heart pounding, realizing this moment required her to be vulnerable. Yes, but it's also about how we heal from those sad things and how expressing them can bring us strength. The table grew quieter again, but she could sense a shift. They were beginning to trust not just her words, but the safety of their shared space. Charlotte encouraged them to paint representations of what they had lost or would one day lose, wanting them to express their grief without judgment. As they painted, a bond began to form in the silence. Each stroke of the brush became an understanding, an acknowledgement of shared humanity. Charlie, her youngest grandson, who usually peppered her with questions, worked diligently on a painting of his old pet dog. Charlotte admired how he grappled quietly with the joy of memory and the weight of loss. In that moment, she discovered her hidden talent for facilitating discussions that could spark healing. Words escaped the walls of her mind, flowing into the open air where emotion began to crystallize into shared truths. Their art was vibrant with depictions of lost toys, missing friends, and even the fear of losing her. "I miss Peanut," Charlie finally said, his voice a mixture of sorrow and warmth. The room hummed with understanding, empathy exchanged in glances and shared pained smiles. Revealing her own experiences felt risky, and yet it tethered her to them in a way she had never anticipated. "I miss your grandpa, too," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "There are days when I feel like I can't breathe for missing him." In that tactic of reciprocal vulnerability, a resilience began to blossom. They shared small victories following that admission, moments where the heaviness felt lighter through their stories. Through their art, Charlotte saw potential. They could arm themselves with the knowledge that loss, though painful, led to growth and connection. As the sun set, casting a warm radiance across their canvases, Charlotte felt hope blooming in her chest. "Tomorrow," she declared, "we explore how love can emerge from loss." The glimmer of resolve in her grandchildren's eyes reassured her. They were learning to confront their feelings head-on. Yet a whisper of doubt crept in. Would they be able to embrace love after future losses? Would this cycle of vulnerability and exploration lead to unguarded sorrow? The following day loomed with promise and anxiety. Would they be able to merge their artistic expressions of love with the weight of loss? The journey to understand these two potent experiences felt critical, yet uncertain. Would they be ready to explore that intertwining relationship, or would they shy away? The stakes rose high, leaving her breathless with anticipation. The sun streamed through Charlotte's kitchen window, warming the well-worn table where her grandchildren were busily preparing for another art session. This time, the theme was love and growth, an exciting venture following their exploration of loss. Charlotte's heart thudded with anticipation. It felt like their journey together was beginning to solidify into something profound. Yet, the thought of confronting love, entwined with loss, felt heavy on her heart. As they gathered around the table, paintbrushes at the ready, Charlotte took a steadying breath. "Today, we're going to explore how love can emerge from the pain of loss," she began, her voice steady but affectionate. "Sometimes, when we lose something or someone we love, we can discover new ways of loving others." Moments of silence passed as her grandchildren absorbed her words. The bravest of the bunch, Charlie, broke the stillness with an impassioned query. "Like how we love each other, Grandma?" Charlotte's heart swelled. "Exactly, Charlie. It's about finding love in the small things, even after we've lost something big. Let's paint what love looks like to each of us." As they dipped their brushes into vibrant colors, Charlotte prepared herself for what could be the most significant discussion yet. Each stroke of the brush felt like stepping deeper into a river of vulnerability, the current threatening but ultimately transformative. Her grandchildren painted images reflecting their unique experiences, splashed with exuberance. Mary crafted a portrait of their dog, dancing in a field of flowers, symbolizing joy, mingled with memory. In this act of creation, they weren't hiding from pain. They were embracing it, showcasing the journeys that intertwined love and loss. The workshop buzzed with creativity and understanding, the act of painting not merely expressing emotions, but ingraining resilience into their hearts. With every brushstroke, Charlotte forged ahead, coaxing deeper conversations. "Remember when we talked about how we miss Grandpa? Can we depict how his love still lives in us?" Discussions blossomed, travels down memory lane stitched together, and Charlotte began to weave threads of love into conversations about loss, stories wrapped around laughter, healing, and connection. It was in this space that Charlotte discovered her talents as a facilitator of emotions. She could guide her grandchildren toward growth, opening the floor for tears and laughter alike, allowing each emotion a place. Later, with the sun casting warm hues across their artwork, Charlotte began crafting a new piece of her own. Inspired by her grandchildren, she poured her emotions into the canvas, painting vignettes of family memories filled with love. Each stroke represented moments both joyous and bittersweet, a reminder of life's complexity. As the last bit of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Charlotte realized how far they had come. The room filled with laughter, stories, and colors infused with deeper meaning. Observing her grandchildren's interactions stoked a flame of gratitude in her chest, confirming the values of honesty and vulnerability as guiding principles in their lives. Recognition washed over Charlotte. She had transformed. She stood not just as a grandmother, but a pillar of emotional strength for her grandchildren. As they embraced this holistic approach to life and art, she witnessed their evolution manifest through each canvas they created together. The next day, Charlotte felt ready for a breakthrough. Empowered by their work, she invited her children to join them for an afternoon gathering to showcase the mural. The children buzzed with excitement, but Charlotte's heart pounded with apprehension. Would her children appreciate the art and the shared journey? Would they see the fruits of that vulnerability? As the day of the unveiling dawned, Charlotte felt a sense of urgency to harness her newfound confidence. She carefully set up the kitchen space, each artwork placed strategically to tell a story of collective love and loss. When her children arrived, her heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. Judgments crossed her mind as her daughter entered, capturing their canvases, their creation shining brightly like fragments of their souls. Charlotte stood tall as they admired the mural, every brushstroke symbolizing their emotional journey painted together. "This is beautiful, Mom," her daughter exclaimed, tears brimming her eyes. "I had no idea you all were creating something so meaningful." Recognition spread through Charlotte. Her heart expanded with pride. Her daughter's validation ignited the confidence she had fought hard to nurture within herself. "It's our legacy, a tapestry of our love, fears, and everything in between," she responded, basking in their admiration. That afternoon, their conversations flowed deeper and richer. The children took turns, recounting how each brushstroke represented not just their creativity, but shared resilience, laughter, and connection. Charlotte knew that this was the moment of culmination, a proud display of growth not only in artistry, but also in their souls. As conversations turned to laughter, Charlotte felt a sense of catharsis, her fear of judgment overshadowed by acceptance and love, not just for herself, but for her family's journey together. In that moment of vulnerability intertwined with joy, Charlotte triumphed, not through the acclaim of others, but through realizing her growth as an artist and citizen of her family. She exemplified resilience, courage, and unconditional love, unearthing a new facet of herself she previously buried under doubt. Later, as she closed her eyes that night, she reflected on all they had achieved, how connection and love bridged the divides life had created. The promise of who they would become together shimmered before her like an uncharted canvas. Now, empowered by her journey, Charlotte would continue to face each challenge head-on, creating beauty through life's adversities alongside her grandchildren. What awaited her was not just the echo of their laughter, but a life filled with the vibrant strokes of love and resilience painted boldly on the canvas of the future. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. You need to support us as true fans of personal overcoming stories. This is the moment to express your appreciation. Don't wait even one more second to share.